One piece of easy advice. Never agree to speak after Nigel Farage. He's not bad for a beginner, is he, really? And in the cross-party spirit of this occasion, I want to start, actually, by paying tribute to the first speaker, Kate Hoey. It's easy for me. I've got 100 allies, at least, on my side of the house. Well, I hope 100. But for her and her few tough resistance fighters in the Labour Party, it's really, really difficult. And she has been the bravest MP I have seen for many a year. Now, the danger about coming on last in one of these things is that everything gets said first. Indeed, this happened to me once before. And I got to the door and I said this to the doorman. I said, it's a bit difficult, this speech, because they've all said it already. And he said, that's all right, Mr. Davis. Everything's been said, but it's not yet been said by everyone. You know, so let's see how we get on today. I've got to start, Nigel, thank you very much, by deleting all my Macron jokes. But let's get down to the serious issue. June 23rd, in 2016, not this year, Nigel, it's, June 23rd was the greatest democratic event in our history. It was the most important political decision in our modern history. 17.5 million people made a decision. But some people in Britain today and some people in Europe think that they know better. We know they don't. And our task today, and our task for the next however long it takes, is simple but historic. And that is, we have to make sure that the British government delivers on that decision without dilution or delay, delivers on that decision and gives us a real Brexit. Now, you know, because you've just been told, that I have a serious difference of opinion with our Prime Minister. But even so, I have to tell you that I view the behaviour of the European Union leaders at Salzburg with contempt. With contempt. Bad manners and discourtesy are not the hallmarks of great men. Indeed, I rather felt that we should send them Jacob Rees-Mogg to give them some lessons in manners. Now, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, she and I have always treated the European Union leadership with respect. Maybe sometimes too much respect, but with respect. My comment to them after Thursday is disrespect our Prime Minister and you disrespect our country. Disrespect the decision of the British people, Mr. Macron, and you disrespect our democracy. And if you think you can bully our country, all I can do is recommend you read some history books. Now, everybody in this room has one thing in common. We don't just love our country, we believe in our country. We consider ourselves lucky to be born here. It is astonishing how a small island off the northwest coast of Europe with less than 1% of the population of the world is so powerful, so successful, so influential, so effective, so magnificent, frankly. Such a great country, Great Britain. It was the first great parliamentary democracy. It has one of the fairest justice systems in the world. This country has carried the banner of freedom higher and for longer than any other country in the world. We were the inventors of the Industrial Revolution. We look back on Newton, Michael Faraday, Alexander Fleming, a list, back to Shakespeare, of great geniuses that grew out of that free speech and that free action that they're allowed in this country and were allowed long before they were anywhere else. And of course, as Kate said, we have the advantage of the English language. Not just for ourselves, but worldwide. The language of the internet, the language of medicine and science and engineering and international law and international commerce and the media. What have we got to fear? And I noticed Kate listing the international organisations we're members of, the member of the United Nations Security Council, leading member of NATO, leading member of the Commonwealth, and a number of others that she laid out before you. And I was standing up there, and I was just standing there thinking, yeah, and that was all before we were members of the European Union. So for all those reasons, we have nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear. And that is the reason why we should only accept a clean and clear Brexit. Not some fudge, not some weak compromise. And I have to tell you, I'm afraid that a weak compromise is exactly what I think Chequers is. That's why I resigned, and that's why I'm standing in front of you here today, because we've had to restart this campaign to give back the British people what they have already won for themselves once over. So well, let's talk about democracy. What do the British people think of Chequers? More than half of them? More than half of them oppose it. Less than a fifth of them support it. And they're right. Now, why are they right? There are many reasons, there are many things wrong with Chequers, but I'm going to focus on just one for you today, because it's central to what we thought we were voting for back on June 23rd, 2016. The government is proposing a common rule book for the regulation of our industry. This is a very delicate turn of phrase, a common rule book. What does it mean? It's common only that it means it's written by the European Union and obeyed by us. That's what a common rule book means. For a nation that's seeking its independence in the world, seeking to make its own way in the world, this is simply ridiculous. This is simply untenable. For the fifth largest economy in the world, leading the way in innovation, we cannot be governed by a body in which we have no say, no influence, no vote. It should not even be contemplated. We should be discussing we should by all means be discussing these rules with them as collaborators and cooperators, but not taking orders. And let me just give you one practical effect of this, because you will see time and again big businessmen interested in defending their own business as it exists today under the existing rules today say this is what we need. You know, we're in the chemical industry. We don't have very many changes in rules. We'll live by this. We're in the car industry. We don't have many rule changes. We'll live by this. But what about our future? What about those industries that are going to matter to us in the future? We are a leading country in artificial intelligence, in life sciences, in self-driving cars, in genetics. How on earth are we going to stay a leading country if the rules for those industries are written by our competitors and written in a way that will disadvantage us? Of course, we're told there's no alternative. Well, that's plumb wrong. That is just a lie. I'm afraid it's untrue. The best answer for us, and incidentally, the best answer for the European Union, is a free trade deal, an advanced and streamlined free trade deal based on the best in the world. That's the answer we need to go for. Now, the European Union has actually already demonstrated both its interest and capacity for doing these free trade deals. It's done one. It's done one with Canada. It's done another one with South Korea. It's in the middle of doing one with Japan. The Canada deal was the European Union's most ambitious and extensive trade deal. It's an agreement between two sovereign entities with zero tariffs, but no free movement, no payment of vast sums of money, no European court oversight, no interference in Canadian laws. So why can't we have that? Why can't we have that? Now, I've talked, you may have heard me talk about it when I was still a minister, about Canada plus, plus, plus. What does it mean? It means the best of Canada, plus Korea, plus Japan, plus all the other deals the European Union has done. Using just the precedents the European Union itself has created, we can create the best trade deal in the world. And I'm anxious not to put you off, but both Donald Tusk and Michel Barnier have stated they agree with this. In March of this year, they said that they wanted to see a free trade deal, and they accepted that it would be more advanced than any free trade deal we've had so far. So why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we doing it? No, that's not the right answer. You know, once at a previous meeting like this, I was unwise enough to ask the audience a question then. And it was in Gateshead. It was, I think it was the Monday, wasn't it? Before, he knows what I'm going to say, before the actual vote in the referendum. And I said to the audience, now tell me, who's the most important person in Europe? And a roar of Nigel Farage came back from the audience, you know. So the old rule is in politics, don't ask a question to which you don't know the answer. But in this case, it's don't ask a question to which the audience doesn't know the answer. Now, the reason that is given, one of the reasons given, Kate referred to earlier, and that is the question of the Northern Ireland border. And the first thing to say is, as she said in a way, we are not going to put up a hard border under any circumstances. Full stop, end of story. And if you go to Mr. Varadkar and ask him, he'll say, I'm not going to put up a hard border under any circumstances. And if you go to the European Union, they say, they're not going to force a hard border under any circumstances. So where's the problem? Well, the problem is political rather than practical, because there's already a border there. I've visited the border on quite a lot of occasions over the years. And the first time I started to visit it was because of the fact that paramilitary organizations were using smuggling across the border as a way of funding their activities, and we managed to shut that down in various ways. But I've been there a number of times, and there is a currency border. There is a judicial border. There is a tax border, a VAT border, an excise border, a corporation tax border, an income tax border. And they all operate perfectly well without a visible border. All of the customs work is done by intelligence-led customs investigations, and we manage that border. I won't guarantee you there's no smuggling there, but it works perfectly well. It works perfectly well. And if we have a tariff-free arrangement with the European Union, there'll be no other money to be collected at the border, so you don't need the border for that. And if the European Union is worried about goods coming in from the rest of the world and making their way through Belfast, down to Dublin, and then across to Bavaria or wherever, it's an astonishing way to smuggle goods in, but if they're worried about that, well, there are 5 commercial ports in Northern Ireland, and 2 airports, and we can monitor them too. And finally, of course, there's the regulatory issue. But actually, we already have special arrangements for Northern Ireland, which doesn't differentiate it doesn't cause a border down the Irish Sea. They have different arrangements on carbon pricing, so that electricity can be made economically in Northern Ireland. We have different arrangements. It's a common epidemiological area, in other words, a common biosecurity area, so that if there's mad cow disease, as it was in the first case, or foot and mouth, something like that, the island of Ireland is protected, and Northern Irish farmers are protected too. So we have mechanisms. This can be done if the Irish government is willing to talk to us about practical solutions to a practical problem. This is nothing more than a way of bending the British government to the will of the European Union over the single market and the integrity of the United Kingdom. Now, yesterday on television, one of the things the Prime Minister said very firmly is that no deal is better than a bad deal. And I think she does mean it. I think she does mean it. And I think, frankly, Salzburg may have had one remarkable effect on British politics. It may have introduced some steel into some of it. So the situation is that no deal is better than a bad deal. Or to put it more accurately, a World Trade Organization deal is better than a bad deal. And why do I say that? Is this just wishful thinking on my part? Because actually, if you look at some of the most successful countries in selling into the single market, they're actually already using World Trade Organization rules because they're coming from outside the single market. We are being out-competed, actually, by some other countries in the rest of the world into the single market who have to put up with these rules and regulations already. So it's not difficult, well, it's not impossible, and it's not actually, in my view, particularly difficult to make it work. That being said, it's not the best deal. The best deal is a trade deal. But it's not just not the best deal for us. I was in Munich on the same day the Prime Minister was in Salzburg. I was talking to a mixture of German politicians, academics, and businessmen about the consequences for Germany if there were a tariff system in place. Essentially, it would mean that the car industry in Bavaria, where I was speaking, would lose about 1/3 of its exports to this country. That's 1/3 of the second biggest, fastest growing car market in the European Union. They'd lose 2/3 of their dairy exports to the United Kingdom. France will lose a significant portion of its wine exports. Well, there's always Australian and Chilean and so on for us. But just see how the French farmers feel about that. Mr. Macron's already got even lower popularity ratings than Mr. Hollande, which is pretty difficult in its own right. Think how it'll go after that. But not just them, also Belgium and the Netherlands will lose large parts of their cross-channel trade. And the worst hit of all will be Ireland. Don't cheer. I mean, I don't wish economic downturn on anybody. And actually, one of the arguments against a WTO deal for me is what it would actually do to our neighbours. Because actually, I think they would suffer worse than we would. We have got a free-floating currency, which will compensate for any changes in trade arrangements. We have got our own free government at that point, which is completely unfettered by regulations of any sort other than the ones it wants to impose itself. But most of all for us, for the last 20 years at least, the rest of the world trade has been growing for us faster than European trade. 20 years ago, 60% of our trade was with Europe and 40% with the rest of the world. Now it's the other way round. 60% with the rest of the world. And as we leave the European Union, that change will get faster and faster and faster. And that will be what powers the British economy in the coming years. So, in conclusion, a free trade plus deal, we take back control of our laws, our borders and our money, but seek a true free trade partnership with what I hope will be a friend and ally. I am confident that with sufficient will and purpose, such a deal can be achieved. We're standing on the brink of a historic change. Future generations will judge our decisions in the next year or so, and they'll make a judgment as to whether we have grasped the opportunities that are available to us, the new future that's available to the British people and our children and our grandchildren and their children too. All we need is the courage to reclaim our birthright, to govern our own country, to make our own laws and to determine our own destiny. Thank you.